Pakistan lost clout in the world, not of its own doing, but because this is one of the area that has been hostage to the great game since forever. The sands keep on shifting, and because of that, things are never easy for Pakistan. Badshah Khan said this once, that Pakistan's bad luck was that, look at our neighbors, these are some of the oldest historical dynasties, and anything that happens geopolitically has a bearing on Pakistan. Of course, the other reason is we have access to hot water. Thirdly, you're a Muslim country. Fourthly, there is the Kashmir problem. And fifthly, in the economic race, 40 years, Pakistan did not take part. We were too busy surviving, and we forgot that the lesson was to thrive. India did. It got clever. And we realize now that there's no such thing as diplomatic cooperation. It is all economic cooperation, all about economic interests. So part of why we lost clout, and part of why we don't have the goodwill we should have, hosting more than 3 million Afghan refugees, 4 million at one point in time, making sure the world was saved from a third world war. We provided the stability in both Afghan wars. Despite that, when you're a poor country, people use you and they take what they have to. And so I would say that the only fault that could be placed at Pakistan's door is that we didn't manage our information flow properly. Number one, you're aware of the EU Disinfo Lab and what they were doing against Pakistan. So yes, there's a huge India factor, but that India factor would not have been possible without their economic strength. They were collaborators with India who were actively helping them bring Pakistan down. Again, rather than blame the enemy, why not take a good look at our own selves? Where did we fall short in the international name and shame game? Kashmir has been terrorized. It has been tyrannized for the last 70 years. Men, women, children get raped and nobody talks about it. That's an active tool of war, and Pakistan is seen as supporting terrorists. Facebook will not allow people to call Burhan Wani a martyr. Now, when a commercial company becomes that involved in the Kashmir conflict, then you know that the big guns are against you. So, it doesn't matter, being a small country, we've always punched above our weight. But having said that, the Afghan war and what was at stake, those stakes have not gone away. People want a regional presence in Afghanistan, and it took them 20 years for the world to realize that this war was never about democracy. It was never about Al-Qaeda. It was never about the Taliban. It was about regional connectivity. And because CPEC or BRI had already started globally, people started putting their machines in place way before people could see. And so it's a conglomerate of some bad decisions, some underthinking and under-strategizing. And I think it would be good for Pakistan to learn from its mistakes, its strengths and its successes. But in addition to that, I think what's most important both on an Afghanistan and Pakistan front today is to listen to the voice of its people. There is no way the Taliban would have been able to take over Afghanistan if the people of Afghanistan didn't want them. And that is a lesson for Pakistan's rulers as well. Listen to your people. So Prime Minister Imran Khan, even before he took oath, had promised the world Pakistan as a region of peace. That would be nobody's hired gun anymore. And that with both Afghanistan and India's current governments at the time, Ashraf Ghani and Prime Minister Modi, that he would, despite their track record of human rights abuses, he would extend an olive branch to them if it meant regional peace. Now, you saw how those overtures were taken. Leading Prime Minister Imran Khan to talk about small men in big offices. However, I think our efforts are now being globally recognized. For the first time, the European Parliament has called the Kashmir issue a human rights issue. In addition to that, we are now, our first trip of the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi was to Afghanistan, as was his second trip. Speaker Asad Kaisar is one of the architects of the parliamentary initiative to ensure that business to business and people to people relations with Afghanistan are revived through Afghanistan's parliament. Towards that end, we had many meetings with Afghan parliamentarians. We went to Afghanistan, we invited them, many delegations, business delegations. And with the fall of Ashraf Ghani and the rise of the Taliban, that avenue was close to us. But as you're aware that the Prime Minister Imran Khan has set up a council which meets every 2 weeks to discuss problems being faced by Afghans. The Speaker chaired this meeting yesterday. Arbab Shahzad, Sadiq Khan are part of this initiative. As Parliament, all of us are struggling We talk to 60 different ministries, departments on a weekly basis, daily basis sometimes, to ensure that there is no hindrance to Afghan businessmen till Pakistan government and the world recognize the Taliban as the de jure rulers, the de jure government. De facto, we have not stopped trying to help the Afghan people, because for us that is ultimately what matters, the will of the Afghani people. Here I will lay blame at the door of both the administrations of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Pakistan has been hurt by Pakistan's own administration. We used to have at one point in time trade with Afghanistan to the tune of 3.5 billion US. Whatever Pakistan manufactures, because Afghanistan was a country at war, that would get sold in Afghanistan. Because of the mismanagement by authorities in Pakistan, both at the federal and provincial level, 70% of that trade has now been diverted to Chabahar, transit trade, and Pakistan has lost millions of dollars, billions at this point. We are just trading up to 800 million USD, down from 3.5 billion. So the damage has been to Pakistan's economy, not Afghanistan's economy. They can import from anywhere because that's what they do. So I think the new paradigm, the new milieu, the new thinking has to be that the joint enemy of Afghanistan and Pakistan is economic deprivation and poverty. When you're a nation mired in poverty, human rights issues will happen, everything, war will happen, and for Afghanistan to stabilize, the businesses and the economy needs to stabilize. They need decent jobs. Given the starvation levels that are happening right now, it just shows that the trillions of dollars that were poured into Afghanistan were never poured into productivity sectors. It was just a stopgap arrangement. As I stated earlier, Pakistan doesn't have a really good record on handling media. We don't know how to handle international media. We don't know how to sell our positive stories. And in the garb of modesty, we forget to inform the world what we've done with the second largest country housing refugees after Turkey. And those are, of course, Afghan refugees. We've given them passports. Our Prime Minister offered that may give them special ID cards. We have special Pakistani and Afghan border passes for them. We did what we could for a country that has been facing war for 45 years. Part of the problem was the Indian hand in Afghanistan's media and their guidance. And of course, part of it was Pakistan's failure to address. We were giving them schools, hospitals, and yet we used to bother them on small things like visas, renewals, scholarships. So I think while Pakistan was a great source of help to Afghans, we were never able to market it, but we also made mistakes at home. We still do. State Bank makes it difficult for Afghan officials to open up bank accounts. We allow the Chinese and the Iranians to do it, but not the Afghans. FBR makes their business a bit difficult. There are other government departments that just don't understand that Afghans are not your enemy. Of course, with Ashraf Ghani and Hamid Karzai was this perception that Afghanistan is not our friend, but now that is not the case anymore. So I think there is misconception on both sides, distrust on part of certain Pakistanis who don't trust Afghans, who felt that they should have been more grateful for what was done for them, and mistrust by Afghans who felt that they should not have been stopped from their relations with India. So there's some air has to be cleaned, some things have to be effaced. Perhaps something what South Africa did, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, that Afghan and Pakistans have to sit face to face, side by side, and discuss what pained the two nations, because you cannot change your neighbors. So as I stated, the first step would be a Truth and Reconciliation South African-esque committee in which we bring the difficult subjects out in the open. Both the Afghans and Pakistanis, we have a similar nature. We tend not to complain, but unfortunately in wartime that is not an option. We will have to open up our heart, the hardest of things to do. Surah Inshirah has that when you want to do something difficult, you'll have to expand your heart. We'll have to act as the older big brother, the good brother, Pakistan in this case. We'll have to talk about the issues of mistrust, the pain that has been caused to each other along the years. You realize that Pakistan has lost a large amount of civilians in America's war on terror, and nobody ever compensated us, even acknowledged the Pakistani sacrifices, civilian sacrifices, military sacrifices. So quite apart from housing our neighbor, our Muslim neighbor, our brother, our sisters, our Pashtuns, our non-Pashtuns, we have also lost lives in a war that was not created by Pakistan. So we have to acknowledge that role of Pakistan. We have to sit down and talk, because talking is the only way we'll be able to come past this mistrust And this mistrust, I can assure you, has been fomented. It is not organic. It has been placed there by people who don't want the region to be stable. Look at ASEAN. ASEAN's trade trebles each year. Why? Because they have managed to talk to each other. Even the United States, who had massive problems with Mexico, President Trump, if you recall, he wanted to build the border wall. Trade between NAFTA states never stopped. They stopped talking to each other. They shut down the US government for 6 months, but they never stopped talking. And I think the cardinal mistake that has been made in Pak-Afghan relations is that we would stop talking to each other, we would shut borders. Don't shut international borders and don't stop talking to each other.